3 terrifying true stories of parents who faced pure evil. Story 1, Part 1. The room at the end of the hall. When Nora and Adam finally brought their infant daughter home, everything felt like a fresh start, a new house, a new town, and the promise of peace. But peace is fragile. And in their case, it was never truly theirs. Because behind the last door at the end of the hallway was something old, something angry, and it wanted their child. The house was a quiet 2-story colonial nestled at the edge of Bramble Hollow, a sleepy little town where the neighbors still baked pies and waved from porches. To the outside world, it was picturesque. But to Nora, something about it felt still. Not peaceful. Just waiting. They moved in mid-October, the trees blazing with reds and oranges. The real estate agent had been oddly insistent that the nursery be set up in the front room. "Good light," she had said. Much better than the room at the end of the hall. She chuckled, but it didn't sound right. More like someone trying to hide fear behind small talk. Nora remembered the way the woman's eyes lingered just a second too long on that last door upstairs. No one mentioned it again. By the end of the first week, the nursery was ready, pale yellow walls, a crib Adam had built, and a shelf of soft animals waiting to be loved. Baby Lila cooed and gurgled happily in her new space, seemingly unaffected by the lingering chill that clung to the house's bones. But Nora began to notice strange things. The baby monitor, one of those high-tech, motion-sensing types, would crackle with static at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night. No crying, no movement, just static, followed by a whisper. It was too soft to make out, but it wasn't random. It sounded like words. She thought she was imagining it, postpartum exhaustion, maybe. But one night, curiosity overcame her fear. She pressed the monitor closer and listened. "Mine again?" She bolted from bed, heart hammering in her chest, and ran to Lila's room. The baby was sound asleep. Everything was as it should be. Except for one thing. The stuffed lamb, the one Nora always placed on the top shelf, was now inside the crib, tucked neatly beside Lila. Adam shrugged it off in the morning. "Maybe you put it there and forgot." But Nora didn't. She was sure. The occurrences grew more bizarre. Toys moved on their own. Books fell from shelves. Cold air drifted in even with the windows shut tight. Lila began waking at exactly 3:17 a.m., staring at the corner of her room and babbling softly, always in the same direction, toward the hallway. One night, Nora stood in the nursery as Lila slept. The house was quiet except for the baby's soft breathing. She turned to leave and paused at the hallway. That last door at the end, the one they never opened, was cracked open. They'd kept it locked since moving in. It had no furniture, no lights, just an empty space they hadn't figured out what to do with yet. The knob was cold when she touched it. The inside was even colder. A bare room with faded wallpaper peeling from the walls. Dust thick on the floor. But it wasn't empty anymore. In the center of the room sat an antique wooden cradle. Old. Worn. Too small for a modern child. And it was rocking. There was no wind. No vibration. It rocked gently, steadily, as if someone or something had just left it. Nora stumbled back and slammed the door shut, hard in her throat. She turned to find Adam at the top of the stairs, bleary-eyed. "What are you doing?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. She pointed. "That room. There's a cradle. Rocking. I swear to God." But when they opened the door together, it was empty. No cradle. No rocking. Just that bone-deep chill. "I think you need sleep," he whispered, holding her hand. "You're overwhelmed." Nora didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Nora noticed bruises on Lila's legs. Tiny ones, like fingertips. She checked the crib, no sharp edges. No way to explain them. Then the monitor started recording by itself. At 3:17 a.m., it activated and captured a whisper that chilled Nora's blood. "Give her back." And from that night on, the door at the end of the hall never stayed closed, no matter how many times they locked it. Part 2. The room at the end of the hall. Some rooms are closed for a reason. Some cries in the night aren't meant to be heard. And some parents learn too late that evil doesn't knock, it waits. After the monitor captured the voice, the rasped demand for Nora to give her back, everything escalated. The cold was no longer confined to the end of the hallway. It crept like a fog into Lila's room, then into their bedroom. Lights flickered. Faucets turned on. The television powered itself, always to static at 3:17 a.m. Adam, ever the skeptic, chalked it up to faulty wiring, maybe a gas leak messing with their minds. But Nora knew better. The bruises on Lila's tiny legs were multiplying, and the shadows, they were watching. One evening, while Adam was at work, Nora decided she couldn't stay silent. She called the real estate agent, the woman who had so carefully avoided that final room during their first walkthrough. "I need to know what happened in this house," Nora demanded. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, the woman sighed. "That house has history. People don't like to talk about it. But since you're living there..." She told Nora about the Fenwick family, who owned the home nearly a century ago. Reverend Thomas Fenwick was a man of strict religious conviction and believed his wife's stillborn child was the result of a curse upon their bloodline. Desperate and delusional, he held seances, attempting to call the soul back into the body. Eventually, his wife disappeared. Some say she died from grief. Others say the Reverend locked her in that final room, convinced she was possessed. Neighbors claimed they heard her screaming, begging for her baby. Then one day, silence. Thomas Fenwick was found hanged in that same room. The cradle, the one Nora saw, was still there when the authorities arrived, rocking. They buried him in the local cemetery. The house remained vacant for years, passed through hands, but no one stayed long. Nora dropped the phone. Suddenly, it all made sense. The whispers, the cold, the unseen hands leaving bruises on her child, the cradle, and now the door refused to stay closed. That night, Adam returned home and found Nora barricading the end of the hallway with furniture, chairs, a dresser, even the baby's changing table. He stared at her like she was losing her mind. "Nora, this has to stop," he said. "You're scaring Lila." "I'm not the one scaring her," she snapped. "She wakes up every night screaming at that door." Adam pulled down the barricade, sighing. "We're getting help. A therapist. A doctor. Something." But the help they needed didn't wear lab coats. That night, they heard a sound that made their blood run cold. Laughter. From inside Lila's room. They rushed in. The crib was empty. Nora screamed. "Lila!" The room was freezing, breath visible in the air. And then the baby monitor crackled. Down here, they turned slowly. The door at the end of the hall stood open. Not cracked. Not swinging. Wide open, waiting. Nora ran before Adam could stop her, descending the stairs. She flipped on lights, checked every room, every corner. Then she heard the cry. From the basement. She paused at the basement door, hand trembling on the knob. The crying grew louder, Lila's unmistakable wail. She threw it open and descended, Adam close behind. The basement was damp and dark, the air heavy with mildew and something older. The crying stopped. Nora's flashlight swept across the floor. And there, in the far corner, was the cradle. Old. Dust-covered. Rocking gently. Inside it was Lila, unharmed, sleeping peacefully. Nora ran forward, scooped her up, sobbing. But as they turned to leave, the light flickered, and a shape stepped into view. A man, tall and gaunt, dressed in tattered black robes. His eyes were hollow. His voice was the whisper from the monitor. "She belongs here. She's mine." Adam stepped in front of Nora, shielding her and the baby. "Stay away from my family." The figure didn't move. Didn't speak again. It simply faded, dissolving into the darkness as though it had never been there. They left that night, barely grabbing anything but Lila and the car keys. Nora didn't stop shaking until they were 10 miles away. They stayed in a motel for several days. No bruises. No cold spots. No voices at 3:17 a.m. But just when they began to breathe easy, Nora checked the baby monitor one last time, just to be sure. It had no signal. No connection. But it was recording. And on the screen, She saw the hallway of the old house. The door at the end was open, and inside the cradle, something else was sleeping. Something wrapped in cloth, rocking gently. A whisper followed. Not this one, but I'll wait. Part 3. The room at the end of the hall. You can flee a haunted house. You can break a lease, burn the keys, and never look back. But evil, once invited, doesn't need an address. 2 months had passed since Nora and Adam fled the house on Harrow Street. They rented a small apartment near the city, one with no history, no cold spots, and certainly no doors at the end of narrow hallways. Lila was laughing again, eating, sleeping through the night. But Nora wasn't. The dream started almost immediately. She'd find herself standing in front of the old nursery room. Always the same, the white door ajar, the creaking sound of a cradle rocking, a pale hand reaching from inside. She never opened the door in those dreams. She knew better, but the baby monitor wouldn't let her forget. Even unplugged, even with the batteries removed, it sometimes lit up in the middle of the night. Faint static, soft lullabies playing in reverse. And every time the screen showed the same image. That hallway, that room, that cradle. Empty but waiting. Adam thought it was PTSD. He begged her to get rid of the monitor.
So she did.
She buried it.
Literally.
Behind the apartment building, under a concrete slab in the shared parking lot. Then she bought a new one, modern, smart, internet-connected.
Safe.
Until it happened again. Nora woke one night to the sound of humming, not a voice she recognized. She grabbed her phone to check the new monitor's app. The screen flickered. It wasn't her apartment being shown. It was the room. That damned room. And inside it, this time, wasn't the cradle. It was a mirror.
Tall.
Wooden.
Old.
Facing outward. And just before the app crashed, Nora saw something crawl out of the mirror on all fours.
Thin. Pale.
With a stitched-up mouth. She screamed. Adam bolted upright. I saw it. I swear to God, Adam. I saw it again. It's coming back. He wrapped his arms around her, but his hands were cold. Ice cold. That's when she saw the bruises again. On Lila. This time on her ribs.
Deep.
Finger-shaped.
She didn't tell Adam. She didn't need to.
That night, he woke screaming, claiming something had whispered in his ear. You took her from me. Nora knew what she had to do. She returned to Harrow Street. The house was listed as condemned now. The front door was boarded, the windows shattered. But the foundation remained intact. That room still existed. She stepped inside. The house was hollow.
Silent.
But it didn't feel abandoned. It felt expectant. She walked the hallway with slow, deliberate steps. The floorboards groaned under her weight. At the end, the door stood closed. This time, she opened it. The room was empty. No cradle. No mirror. No toys. Only the wallpaper, the same pale blue with hand-painted stars, peeling away like old skin. And in the center of the room, a circle had been carved into the floorboards. Not painted.
Carved.
Symbols she didn't understand. Crosses turned sideways, eyes with slashes through them, names scratched deep in childlike handwriting. One name was repeated over and over. Annabelle. That's when the air changed.
Heavy. Pressed.
Like the house was breathing her in. The door slammed shut behind her. Nora spun, heart hammering. In the corner, a shape began to materialize. A woman in a long black dress, skin translucent, mouth gaping open like it was trying to scream but couldn't remember how. She floated an inch off the floor, eyes milky white. The ghost of Annabelle. The room shook. The symbols on the floor glowed faintly. And in her head, Nora heard the whisper. You took her from me. No, Nora whispered back. She's not yours. She's mine. Annabelle tilted her head.
Sad.
Longing. She was promised. No, Nora snapped. She's a child. You're not taking her.
Not now.
Not ever. The ghost flickered.
Shivered.
And for a brief moment, Nora saw something behind the rage, a shadow of grief, of motherhood lost. She knelt and pulled something from her coat pocket. Lila's rattle. Wooden. Simple. It used to be her favorite. Nora placed it in the center of the carved circle. She's not yours. But maybe this can be. Something to hold. Something to quiet the anger. The house groaned. The walls cracked. Annabelle floated toward the rattle, reached for it with long, bony fingers, and vanished. No scream. No crash. Just silence. The air lifted. The cold retreated. The door creaked open behind her. It was over. Or so she thought. 3 weeks later, Lila spoke her first full sentence. She was playing in the living room when she turned to Nora and said, "Mommy, the sad lady says thank you." Nora froze. Adam looked at her, then at Lila. "What lady, sweetheart?" Lila pointed to the dark corner of the room, smiled. "She said you gave her my toy. Now she can rest." Nora's eyes welled with tears. But Lila wasn't finished. "She said you're strong, but the others are still hungry." Nora's heart sank. "Others?" Lila nodded, then turned back to her coloring book. She began drawing a door. At the end of a long hallway,